you marry me, yes or no?
Amadeus was not a period drama alone. It was the insanity nobody had predicted, an opera of genius and envy woven together with powdered wigs, perspiration, and fixation. But beneath the beautiful costumes and opera's grand and glorious, the bedlam was as orchestral as the music was. The making of the film had attached to it moments of serendipity, of accidents that rewrote fates, and of performers whose work spilled so near to actuality that they never really returned the same. One reading from the edge saved the star. Each piano key struck was played with eerie exactness, and in some unforeseen way Mozart's music reappeared on the pop charts 200 years later. What happened wasn't just a film, yet another blockbuster as it would turn out, of violence, sex, and pathos. It was a duel masquerading as music, a rumination on genius, mediocrity, and the agonizing misery of almost being great. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel StarVault TV, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. For F. Murray Abraham, the journey wasn't just an acting job, it was lived. When he became Antonio Salieri, he didn't just don a powdered wig and memorize dialogue, he became him. On location, the emotions reflected the script with unsettling accuracy. Tom Hulce, playing Mozart, had with him a lightness, a heedless exuberance that reflected the character's feral energy. He instantly connected with Meg Tilly, initially cast as Constanza, trading in-house jokes and adolescence. Abraham sensed the distance immediately, standing at the periphery of their energy, like Salieri when he saw Mozart appropriating the attention, and he was left shadowed. That pain became authentic, and it spilled over into the film. The jealousy wasn't manufactured, it was endured. Their scenes together had an undiluted electricity, envy, sorrow, and wonder mixed into something no script could have arranged better. Abraham later confessed it in public. He felt like the odd man out, and the camera caught that loneliness forever. And yet, Abraham almost didn't get to play Salieri at all. Hollywood didn't have him on their radar as a contender. He was an esteemed stage actor, but untested in front of the camera, reserved, unknown, and not the natural choice for a role of such gravity. Director Milos Forman auditioned star upon star, trying to find the perfect man to play a composer who would bring both brilliance and venom in equal amounts. Nothing was quite right until Abraham arrived. He didn't read through a whole scene, just one line that sent a shiver down everyone's spine. "Mediocrity's everywhere, I absolve you." In this one line, he delivered the room a confession, not an audition. The quiet that followed was thick, the kind of quiet that occurs when every last person is aware that they've just seen something that can't be denied. Foreman recognized immediately this was Salieri. 1 year later, Abraham was on stage holding the Oscar for Best Actor without anyone questioning it, as if it had been something that was meant to be from the very beginning. After he entered Salieri, Abraham never came back out. He strode around the set like a haunted man, a ghost wandering through Vienna of the 18th century. Crew members gossiped that he never smiled, not even at lunchtime. The way he stared at Hulse was unnerving, something harder than hatred, an envy that seemed etched into his very marrow. Milos Forman himself said he sometimes stalled before getting close to Abraham during filming, as if he'd break the delicate, eerie spell. It wasn't drama or flashy method acting. It was possession. Salieri came to life through him, and no one was brave enough to dispute it. Naturally, the great central conceit of the movie, that Salieri poisoned Mozart, eaten up by jealousy, was a work of fiction. The truth is, Salieri never killed Mozart. He admired him, praised his music, and probably never hated him. The competition that fueled Amadeus was a dramatic creation, cobbled together out of gossip centuries old. Historians have spent decades trying to undo the myth, but the film immortalized it. Even now, Salieri's name is shorthand for jealous mediocrity, a villain conjured by cinema rather than history. Yet that's the power of art. It doesn't always preserve reality, it reshapes it. For Tom Hulce, Becoming Mozart meant more than memorizing lines. It meant finding the music in man. One of the most memorable aspects of his performance was Mozart's cackling, giggling, shrill laugh, a sound that shocked audiences with its preposterousness. It wasn't a fabrication. Historical correspondence depicted Mozart with an infectious, cackling laugh that disturbed the straight-laced elites about him. Hulse constructed his version from scratch, capricious and boyish, and it became iconic. But there was an issue. Months down the line, the producers required him to re-record it. By the time that voice would reach such a pitch, he wouldn't have one left. Hulse went on to whiskey, and it wasn't until after several hard drinks that he could again call upon the giggle. This is the mad joy you're hearing, recorded at the expense of his throat and his sobriety. He wasn't brought aboard for piano abilities, but Hulse wouldn't pretend otherwise. He practiced tirelessly, rehearsing for hours a day until every movement of the fingers was in sync with the soundtrack. Professors watched the footage frame by frame, and what they saw amazed them. Not one misplacement of a gesture. Hulse did not play the notes you heard, but he played them physically, flawlessly, even convincing experts. That obsessive realism extended to the deathbed duet scene, one of the movie's strongest sequences. Abraham and Hulse worked the scene with mathematical accuracy, studying where each hand needed to go, each rhythm needed to hit. It wasn't drama. It was musically accurate to the bar line. For musicians in the audience, it wasn't Hollywood fantasy. It was history coming to life. The casting, however, wasn't without tragedy. Meg Tilly, who had been cast to play Constanza, tore a ligament at the last minute just before filming opened with a pickup game of soccer. Production halted in terror until Elizabeth Berridge was cast at the last minute. She did not have time to bond, no extensive audition process, but her acting was imbued with a desperation that felt raw and true, as if she had indeed been swept abruptly into a world larger than she was. An accident in casting became a cinematic miracle. Other performers weren't so fortunate. Mark Hamill, who had outgrown his Luke Skywalker persona on Broadway by performing Mozart on the live stage 8 shows a week, didn't even receive an audition for the movie. Foreman ruled him out of hand, unable to look beyond the shadow of Star Wars. Hulse was cast, and Hamill sat in the audience, a Mozart lost to the long arm of Hollywood typecasting. Even the younger cast faced impossible odds. Cynthia Nixon, just 17, filmed her scenes as Salieri made while juggling another stage role back in New York. She struck a deal that saw her fly between continents, shoot in bursts, and return immediately, living an actor's double life before she was even an adult. Behind the camera, the authenticity came at a price. The wigs, the corsets, and the layered finery were gorgeous on screen, but the extras swooned at the swelter of candlelight in narrow corridors. Filming in Prague under a communist government imposed an extra level of tension. Government minders tailed the crew, interrogating equipment, reading scripts, watching every step. Foreman, who had escaped that very regime years before, came back rebelliously to tell Mozart's tale in the city that still wore Habsburg majesty. The cobbled streets and palaces hadn't altered in centuries, but the eyes of the regime silently trailed just out of sight. The risks weren't merely political. To film the radiance of opera scenes, the team illuminated historic theaters with open fire pits. Real fire burned its way through 18th-century timber buildings, velvet curtains, and powdered wigs. One spark would have incinerated history. But Foreman was determined to be authentic, and so the risk became part of the DNA of the film. The operas themselves were staged in their entirety. Foreman wasn't interested in taking the easy route. Singers sang complete productions, orchestras performed live, and audience response was filmed as it occurred. What audiences witnessed wasn't an illusion, it was immersion. Even the most iconic part of the story, the anonymous commission for Mozart's Requiem, was based on fact, though much more bizarre than in the film. The impenetrable stranger was not Salieri, but Count Franz von Walsegg, a wealthy aristocrat who had pieces commissioned and masqueraded as his own. Mozart's Requiem was to be Walsegg's wife's burial piece under his name. The true tale wasn't murder, it was forgery. And yet, despite the liberties, the film's impact was undeniable. When Amadeus premiered in 1984, no one expected what followed. A period drama with no bankable stars, released quietly on just 25 screens, it seemed destined to fade. But word spread. Critics raved. Audiences filled theaters. At the close of its run, it had grossed more than $90 million internationally and swept the 1985 Oscars with 8 awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor for Salieri, the man history overlooked. But perhaps the most remarkable impact wasn't on Hollywood, but on music itself. Mozart, dismissed at his death and buried in a pauper's grave, became a pop star 2 centuries later. Record stores couldn't keep up. Mozart albums outsold Madonna and Bruce Springsteen. His symphonies filled malls, commercials, and radios. Teenagers hummed concertos. For the first time in modern memory, classical music topped the charts. The irony was sharp. Salieri, the villain as depicted, enjoyed his own resurrection. His pieces, lost for millennia, were rediscovered and played again. The movie that damned him also brought him back to life. Even in its last testament, Amadeus sounded like a symphony, envy and brilliance entwined, falsehoods giving rise to truths, tragedy coalescing into triumph. It was more than a movie about Mozart or Salieri. It was a reflection on obsession, on mediocrity, and on the tenuous human hope to be remembered. Below the whispers and wigs, the laughter and betrayal, it revealed to us what it does when madness becomes art and art becomes immortality. And like Mozart's music, it haunts, ringing long after the last note.